Nepal is not either a unique case nor an aberration. Historically, agricultural civilization with well-settled population have been the easiest to colonize. It's important to understand that the Britishers were colonial, but the main motivation behind their colonial ambition was wealth and business. As the Britishers had their hands full with India and Burma. Speaking of South Asia, they had little time to think of Nepal. Not that they never had their eyes on Nepal. Britain was ruling 1/4 of the world and had everything to lose. Nepalese on the other hand didn't. So, despite being militarily inferior, Nepalese hold the British off. The Gurkhas are extremely ferocious fighters, a fact which must have deterred the Britishers. It would be wise to admit that the English, who had the strength and the best warfare technology, could have attacked and colonized the brave Gurkhas, but why didn't they do so? Here are 5 reasons about why Nepal was never colonized by the British. The Anglo-Gurkha War started in 1814 AD. The British Crown took direct control over its South Asian colonies only in 1847 AD. So, firstly, Nepal didn't go into a war with the British during the peak of their dominance. In fact, in 1814 AD the British were just trying to get a foothold in South Asia. The British had made constant efforts to persuade the Nepalese government to allow them their trade to the fabled Tibet through Nepal. Despite a series of delegations, the Nepalese Durbar refused to budge an inch. Nepal, at that time, was the largest exporter of wool, tea, Rakta chandan, timber, medicinal herbs and copper in whole of South Asia. Furthermore, all the navigable trans-Himalayan passages for trade between Tibet or China with South Asian nations lied within Nepalese territories only. This was a great source for East India Company, as their primary purpose in South Asia was to just extend their trade. Despite all this, Nepal was never the economic giant that some of the states in India were, but not because Nepal was poor. Compared to contemporary nations, Nepal wasn't. The Gurkha Empire at the time was expanding at a rapid rate and was seriously starting to threaten company's existence. The Gurkha army invaded Kumaon Kingdom and occupied it in 1790–91. Then the Gurkha army invaded Gaul Kingdom and occupied it in 1804. After defeating its king Pradyuman Shah, Bhimsen Thapa, the ruler of Nepal, started demanding tax from the Nawab of Oudh for the territories of Butwal and Swaraj. The British had to come to the rescue of their protectorate. The southern border of Nepal extended to Allahabad after absorption of Palpa Kingdom, including the Tera sector of Butwal taken by the King of Palpa from the King of Awadh on lease in 1801. In 1806, the Gurkha army absorbed all the small kingdoms like Surmad State, Hindar and Bisahar lying across the Gaul and up to Satluj River. In this way, the Gurkhas occupied all the hilly regions such as Nainital, Amara and Dehradun without crossing the Satluj River. However, when the Gurkhas crossed the Satluj River, the Gurkhas' attack on Kangra and siege of Kangra fort west of Satluj River was repulsed by the Kangra king with help from Maharaja Ranjit Singh of Punjab in 1809. The Nepalese side won resounding victory over the British at the end of the first campaign, as the British had seriously underestimated the Gurkhas' military capabilities. After the first campaign, by mid-February, of the 4 British commanders the Nepalese army had faced till that time, Gillespie was dead, Marley had deserted, Wood was harassed into inactivity, and Martindale was practically incapacitated by overcautiousness. The British then actually committed more than, or about, 40,000 troops to fight against the Gurkhas, and that ultimately culminated into the Sugarloaf Treaty. Before the start of Anglo-Gurkha War in 1814, Nepal actually accepted the suzerainty of King Emperor of China in the immediate aftermath of Sino-Nepalese War, 1788–1792 AD. This was another major reason for East India Company's decision to not annex main Nepalese territories. The British were just in the process of consolidating their power in South Asia. Annexation of Nepal would have inadvertently brought them in close confrontation with the King Empire, which they tried to avoid at all cost. This was also the reason why the British left not just Nepal, but Bhutan, Kashmir and Sikkim unconquered as well. The annexation campaign of the British started only in late 1800s. once it had fully gained control over much of the Indian princely states. But by that time Nepal was already considered to be a British ally, and thus the British felt no need to conquer Nepal. Moreover, Jung Bahadur Rana was the first Raja and Prime Minister to get state honours in the court of Queen Victoria in 1850 AD, and also the first South Asian head of state to visit Europe, which improved the friendly relationship between Nepal and the British. This is what most of southern Nepal looked like at the time of British occupation of India. Most of southern Nepal was covered by highly dense forest full of mosquitoes and many undiscovered wild animals. Anyone willing to venture into Nepal would have to pass through this forest, where they would almost surely get bitten by large number of mosquitoes carrying malaria and possibly dengue. Many Indian rulers also tried to invade Nepal but failed because of this huge forest which extended far south to Indian states. The small hilly area between the dense forest and high Himalayas was luring British, who were having difficulty with humid Indian environment. But the Brits had managed to secure other cool and hospitable places around Indian subcontinent. Now, occupation of Nepal would be for resources which the Brits needed in plenty. British already benefited from large Indian plains, and they had little use of small hilly areas producing grains barely enough to sustain farmers' family, let alone pay taxes to Brits. But the British needed woods for railway construction, and for this they had secured various contracts with Nepalese government, which meant that they didn't need to subdue hot-blooded hillmen wielding small kukri and waging guerrilla war against whoever tried to subdue them. Let's go down to history first. The Mongols didn't invade Nepal. However brave the defending soldiers, Mongols could conquer everything in their path, but they didn't venture into the area which is now Nepal and most of northern India because of the geographical advantages. Himalayas is a really tough and almost impossible area to pass through. High mountains with very low amount of oxygen was the reason why northerners never tried to extend their empire south, whereas Nepal's hilly landscape made it harder for the Britishers to mount an attack on Nepal, which left Nepal independent due to its geographical advantage. Also, the social, political situation in India, which was their biggest cash cow, was always a big headache for the Brits. So instead of diverting attention and resources to Nepal, which comparatively was less resourceful, they focused on India. Let me give you the example of northeast India, especially Manipur, another kingdom which fought bravely against the English but were eventually subdued by the English might. Manipur was not attacked until 1890s, 1891 to be precise, while the Britishers had taken control of Burma by 1830s, the reason being that the English never actually needed Manipur. But then when they realized that Manipur could provide a better roadway to Burma from India or vice versa, they attacked and captured Manipur. The British in reality lost more soldiers to illness than at the war. More than 100 years later, after the British had left India, Pandit Jawaharlal Nehru conceived the Non-Aligned Movement, 1961, in which he pledged that India wouldn't invade any country nor be invaded, as a result of which India didn't invade Nepal. However, later on, Indira Gandhi, India's third Prime Minister, daughter of Jawaharlal Nehru, invaded Sikkim. This feisty move sent a chill down King Mahendra's spine. He shuddered from the thought that eventually Nepal would be annexed by India as well, and as a result of which he started spreading anti-India sentiments in Nepal. The entire country was indoctrinated by One Nepal One Identity policy, thereby inciting people to take a firm stand against India. This stringent policy was solely responsible for all the edginess lurking between Nepal and India to this day. It is true that the Anglo-Nepal War that ended in the Sugarloaf Treaty was intended by the British to conquer the peoples of Nepal. Nepal's lack of exciting economic potential for them, they soon lost much interest. This is the main reason why Nepal never fell to the British. Certainly Nepal's valorous soldiers played a part in our independence, but theirs was a fringe contribution in comparison to these pragmatic inclinations of the British. Don't forget to watch my other videos and please subscribe and support, guys. Don't forget to click bell icon and stay updated. Peace.